The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched high above like a metal mountain. 47 different species sat in their special chairs, each one designed for their unique bodies. The air smelled strange, full of different breathing gases and alien scents that made humans feel like outsiders. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the speaking platform in the center of the room. Her simple blue uniform looked plain next to the fancy robes and glowing armor of the other delegates. She had been speaking for 20 minutes now, explaining humanity's proposal for fair trade and better representation in the council. Nobody was listening. The Zephyrians whispered among themselves in their high-pitched voices. Their long necks swayed as they talked, completely ignoring Elena's words. The Kethvar delegates tapped their clawed fingers on their desks, making clicking sounds that echoed through the chamber. Even the peaceful wisdom seekers seemed bored, their large eyes focused on data tablets instead of Elena. Elena had been Earth's ambassador for 15 years. She had sat through thousands of these meetings. She had watched other species get rich while humans did the hard work. She had seen human inventions stolen and given to other races. She had heard humans called barely evolved animals so many times that the words no longer hurt. But today was different. Today she was presenting humanity's final offer. For 300 years, Elena said, her voice steady and clear, humans have been loyal members of this council. We have followed every rule. We have paid every tax. We have fought in your wars and died for your causes. A few delegates looked up, surprised by the sharp tone in her voice. We have asked for very little in return, Elena continued. Fair prices for our goods. Equal votes in council decisions. The right to expand to new worlds like every other species. Simple things that any civilization deserves. The Zephyrian trademaster, a creature that looked like a golden snake with arms, made a hissing sound that everyone knew meant laughter. The baby species wants to play with the adults, it said in perfect galactic standard. Several other delegates joined in the laughter. Elena's jaw tightened, but she kept speaking. Today I present our final proposal. We ask for representation based on our population size. We ask for fair trade agreements. We ask to be treated as equals. She pressed a button and holographic charts appeared in the air above her. The numbers were clear and simple. Humans made up 12% of the galaxy's population, but had only 2% of the council votes. Human ships carried 60% of all trade goods but earned just 15% of the profits. Human colonies produced 40% of the food that fed the galaxy, but had to sell it at prices set by other species. These numbers speak for themselves, Elena said. We ask only for fairness. The hall fell quiet for a moment. Then the Kethvar war chief stood up. He was 8 feet tall with gray skin and muscles like twisted metal. When he spoke, his voice boomed through the chamber. Fairness? He growled. You speak of fairness, little human? Your species learned to fly between stars yesterday. We have ruled space for 10,000 years. What makes you think you deserve equality with your betters? More voices joined in. The crystalline architects of synthesis chimed like broken bells. Irrelevant, they sang together. Human concerns are irrelevant to true civilization, the trademaster hissed again. Perhaps we should be grateful they can speak at all. Most animals cannot. Elena had heard these insults before, but today something was different. Today she noticed things she had missed in all those other meetings. The way the Zephyrians looked nervous when she mentioned trade routes. The way the Kethvar war chief's eyes twitched when she talked about human colonies. The way even the proud architects seemed worried about something. They were afraid. She could see it now, hiding behind their arrogance and cruel words. They were afraid of humanity, and that fear made them cruel. The council speaker, an ancient being whose species had died out millennia ago but whose consciousness lived in a mechanical body, called for the vote. All in favor of the human proposal? Elena raised her hand. She was the only one. All opposed? 46 hands, claws, tentacles, and energy fields rose into the air. The speaker's voice was cold and final. The proposal is rejected. Furthermore, the council votes to place new restrictions on human expansion. No new colonies for 50 years. All trade must go through approved council partners. Human military vessels are limited to system defense only. The chamber filled with satisfied sounds from the other delegates. The Zephyrians hissed with pleasure. The Kethvar war chief showed his sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. Even the peaceful species seemed happy to see humanity put in its place. Elena stood quietly at the speaking platform. She did not argue. She did not beg. She did not show anger or sadness. Instead, she began gathering her papers and data tablets with calm, careful movements. "Ambassador Vasquez," the speaker said, "do you have anything to say to the council's decision?" Elena finished packing her briefcase. She closed it with a soft click that somehow seemed loud in the huge chamber. She looked up at the speaker, then let her eyes move across all 46 delegates. "Humanity withdraws from this council," she said. The words were quiet but clear. In the huge chamber they sounded like thunder. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The Zephyrians stopped hissing. The Kethvar stopped clicking their claws. Even the ancient speaker seemed frozen. Elena turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. 46 of the galaxy's most powerful beings watched a single human woman walk away from them. At the door, Elena stopped and turned back. "Humanity thanks the Galactic Council for the education," she said. "We will remember everything you have taught us." Then she was gone, leaving behind a chamber full of aliens who were just beginning to understand that something important had changed. For the first time in the Council's 1,000-year history, a member species had simply walked away. In the silence that followed, a few of the wiser delegates began to feel worried. They remembered that humans had a saying about learning from their mistakes. But they also had another saying, one that suddenly seemed more important. "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." The Galactic Council had been fooling humanity for 300 years. But as Elena Vasquez's footsteps faded into the distance, some of them wondered if the time for fooling was over. The great chamber remained silent long after she left, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Admiral Chen Wei stood on the bridge of the UES Liberation, watching the stars through the main view screen. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Everyone knew this was not a normal day. Today, humanity was leaving. The news of Ambassador Vasquez's withdrawal had spread across human space in just 6 hours. Every human ship, every colony, every outpost had received the same message. Come home. It should have been chaos. 300 human colonies scattered across council space. 50 million people living on alien worlds. Thousands of ships in deep space. Getting them all organized should have taken years. Instead, it was happening like clockwork. "Status report," Chen ordered. Lieutenant Torres looked up from her console. "Sector 7 colonies are loading their transports now. Sector 12 finished 3 hours ago. The mining stations in the Kepler Nebula are already moving toward the border." Chen nodded. He had been worried about the miners. They were tough people who might have wanted to stay and fight. But they had followed orders without question, just like everyone else. "What about our trade partners?" Chen asked. "The Altarians are asking questions," Torres replied. "They want to know if they can still buy our medical supplies. The young species are confused. They don't understand why we're leaving." Chen understood their confusion. For 300 years, humans had been the galaxy's workers. They carried cargo between worlds. They grew food for species that could not feed themselves. They built space stations and repaired ancient technology that other races no longer understood. Everyone had taken humans for granted. Even Chen had not realized how important his people were until he saw the reports coming in. "Sir?" Another officer called out. "We're getting emergency calls from 17 different trade routes. They're saying their cargo shipments have stopped." "Any response from the council?" Chen asked. "Nothing official," Torres said. "But we're picking up a lot of confused chatter on their communication networks. They seem surprised that we're actually leaving." Chen almost smiled. Of course they were surprised. For 3 centuries, humans had complained but never acted. They had asked for better treatment but always accepted whatever the council offered. The alien species thought humans were too weak or too scared to ever fight back. They were wrong on both counts. The Liberation was leading a convoy of 200 ships toward the Outer Rim. These were not military vessels trying to escape. They were moving with purpose and planning that spoke of careful preparation. "Admiral," Torres said quietly, "some of the crew are asking questions. They want to know where we're going. The Outer Rim territories are supposed to be worthless." Chen looked at her for a moment. Torres was a good officer, but she was young. She had grown up believing what the council taught about those distant worlds. "Tell me, Lieutenant," Chen said, "what makes a world worthless?" Torres thought for a moment. "Poor resources. Bad location? Dangerous conditions?" "According to whom?" "The council surveys, sir. They mapped all those systems centuries ago. Chen nodded. Yes, they did. But do you know who actually conducted those surveys? Torres looked confused. Then her eyes widened as she understood. Human exploration teams, she whispered. That's right, Chen said. Human teams using human technology, sending reports back through human communication networks. We told the council those worlds were worthless because we wanted them to be left alone. The bridge fell quiet as the crew absorbed this information. They were not fleeing to empty space. They were going home to worlds that humanity had been secretly preparing for centuries. How long have we been planning this? Torres asked. Since the first day we joined the council, Chen replied. Ambassador Vasquez's grandparents started the preparations. Every generation has added to them. We always knew this day would come. On the view screen, more human ships appeared, cargo haulers carrying entire families, research vessels loaded with equipment and data, even some alien friends who had chosen to come with them. The aliens who chose to join the Exodus were mostly from younger species, races that the Council barely noticed or actively ignored. The Altarians, who the Council thought were too emotional. The Denari, who were considered too small to matter. The synthetic beings called the Makers, who were not even considered truly alive. These species had something in common. They had all been helped by humans at some point. When the Altarians faced a plague, human doctors had saved them. When the Denari sun started dying, human engineers had built them mobile habitats. When the Council tried to shut down the Makers for being artificial, humans had given them citizenship and protection. Now these grateful allies were following humanity into the unknown. Admiral, the communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from Council space. It's from the Trade Master. Chen was not surprised. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium was probably starting to panic as their shipping networks collapsed. Put it through, Chen ordered. The Trade Master's golden face appeared on screen, no longer hissing with laughter. Admiral Chen Wei, this is Trade Master Sekhav. I demand an explanation for this disruption of commerce. No disruption intended, Chen replied calmly. We are simply leaving as requested. Requested? The Trade Master sputtered. When did we request this? When you voted to restrict our expansion and control our trade. We decided to accept your decision and remove ourselves from your space entirely. The Trade Master's eyes bulged. But the cargo routes, the shipping contracts, you cannot simply abandon your responsibilities. We are not abandoning anything, Chen said. We are fulfilling the Council's wishes. You wanted us to stay in our place. We have decided our place is elsewhere. This is not what we meant, the Trade Master hissed. Perhaps you should have been more careful with your words, Chen replied. Humanity has learned to take the Council very seriously. He ended the transmission, leaving the Trade Master staring at a blank screen. Sir, Torres said, long-range sensors show Council ships moving toward the borders. I think they might try to stop us. Chen looked at the tactical display. A few Council patrol ships were indeed moving to intercept the human convoys. They were fast ships with powerful weapons. Send them a message, Chen ordered. Tell them we are leaving peacefully as they requested. Any attempt to stop us will be considered an act of war. Sir, those ships outgun us, Torres warned. Chen smiled for the first time that day. Do they? He pressed a few buttons on his command chair. The Liberation's hull began to change. Hidden weapon ports opened. Energy shields that were supposed to be impossible flickered to life. The ship's true specifications appeared on the tactical display. Torres stared at the numbers. Sir, these readings show we could destroy a Council battlecruiser. The Council has always underestimated us, Chen said. We let them think we were weak because it served our purposes. But we have never been defenseless. The Council ships must have seen the same readings. They stopped their pursuit and watched from a safe distance as the human convoys passed by. As the last human transport cleared Council space, Chen opened a general communication channel. His words were broadcast to every world, every ship, every listening post in the galaxy. This is Admiral Chen Wei of the United Earth Systems. Humanity thanks the Galactic Council for 3 centuries of education. We have learned much about the galaxy and our place in it. We now return to our own space to apply these lessons. We wish the Council well in their future endeavors. He paused, then added something that was not in the official script. We'll take it from here. Behind them, human space went dark. The communication networks fell silent. The trade routes stopped moving. The space stations powered down. For the first time in 300 years, the galaxy would have to function without humanity. And in the silence they left behind, some of the wiser alien species were beginning to realize that this might be harder than anyone had imagined. 6 months had passed since the last human ship disappeared from Council space. The great chamber where Ambassador Vasquez had made her final speech now felt different. Empty somehow, even though all 46 remaining species still attended the regular meetings. Council Speaker Meridian's mechanical body hummed as it processed the latest reports. Each week brought more bad news, though the council members tried to pretend everything was normal. Trade Master Sekhav slithered into the chamber, his golden scales looking dull and tarnished. Behind him came War Chief Kromvar, moving more slowly than usual. Even the perfect crystalline forms of the architects seemed clouded and dim. "Report on economic status," Speaker Meridian commanded. Sekhav's voice no longer held its usual arrogance. "Trade volumes are down 67%, he said quietly. 17 major shipping routes have completely stopped operating. Food deliveries to urban worlds are sporadic at best. Surely other species can take over these routes," said Councillor Thexkari of the Wisdom Seekers. Her large eyes blinked slowly as she spoke. "We have tried," Sekhav replied, "but human cargo ships were specially designed for efficiency. Our vessels cannot carry the same loads or travel the same distances. And the humans took all their navigation data with them." War Chief Kromvar's claws scraped against his chair. "What about military concerns? Are the humans planning an attack?" This question had been asked many times over the past 6 months. It was the one thing that kept the council leaders awake at night. "That is the strange part," reported Intelligence Chief Nixtel, a spider-like being with too many eyes. "We have detected no military buildup, no weapons tests, no threatening communications. There is simply nothing." "Nothing?" Thexkari asked. "Complete silence from the Outer Rim territories," Nixtel explained. "Our long-range sensors detect activity. Ships moving. Construction projects. But every probe we send either returns with corrupted data or does not return at all." "Could they be jamming our sensors?" Speaker Meridian asked. "Unknown. The technology required would be far beyond what humans possessed when they left." The chamber fell quiet. This was the mystery that bothered them most. For 300 years, the Council had access to all human technology. They knew what humans could and could not do. Humans were good workers and decent engineers. But they were not supposed to be capable of advanced science. Yet somehow, they had made themselves completely invisible to Council surveillance. Thexkari spoke carefully. "Perhaps we should consider the possibility that we did not know humans as well as we thought." Several delegates made sounds of disagreement. The idea that they could have been wrong about something so basic was too disturbing to accept. "Impossible," declared Architect Prime, its crystalline voice ringing like bells. "We have studied humans for centuries. They are a young species with limited capabilities." "Then how do you explain our current situation?" Thexkari asked. Nobody had a good answer for that. The truth was that the galaxy was falling apart without humans, and nobody wanted to admit it. Food shortages were spreading across Council worlds. Ancient technology was breaking down without human technicians to repair it. Communication networks were failing. Even worse, old conflicts that humans had quietly mediated were heating up again. The hegemony of Kethvar was having border disputes with 3 different neighbors. The crystal beings were in a trade war with the gas-breathing Norellians. Small conflicts that Ambassador Vasquez and her team had prevented through careful diplomacy were now exploding into real problems. "Speaking of which," War Chief Kromvar said, "the situation in the Gamma sector is getting worse. The Altarians and the Volari are mobilizing their fleets." "Over what?" Speaker Meridian asked. "Water rights to the Telos system. The humans used to manage the distribution agreement. Can we not simply recreate their solution?" "We have tried. But the human diplomatic files were encrypted beyond our ability to decode, and both sides refused to accept any council mediation." This was another problem the council faced. Dozens of younger species had followed humanity's example and withdrawn from council authority. Not dramatically like the humans had done, but quietly. They stopped asking for council help. They stopped following council trade rules. They ignored council requests for resources or support. The Altarians had been the first to go. Within days of humanity's departure, they had declared their space neutral territory. The Denari had followed soon after. Then the Makers, the Corvani, the Turellians, and others. These species had always been considered insignificant by the Council. But together, they controlled important resources and strategic locations. Their loss was becoming a serious problem. Perhaps, Thexkari suggested again, we should attempt to contact the humans directly. The suggestion caused an uproar. Several delegates spoke at once, their voices mixing into an angry buzz. Contact them? Kromvar roared. They walked out on us. Let them crawl back when they realize their mistake. The humans will return, Sekhav hissed. They must. They cannot survive without our protection and guidance. But as the months passed, it became clear that the humans were not coming back. If anything, they seemed to be thriving. Ships from the younger species were traveling to the Outer Rim territories. They returned with stories of bustling trade stations and amazing new technologies, but they refused to share details with Council representatives. What exactly are these ships reporting? Speaker Meridian asked. Nixtel's many eyes blinked nervously. They speak of human cities on worlds that were supposed to be barren. Space stations larger than anything in Council space. Technologies that seem impossible. Exaggerations, Architect Prime chimed. Primitive species easily impressed by simple tricks. But Thexkari was not convinced. She had been studying the archived footage from the day Ambassador Vasquez walked out. Watching it over and over, she noticed things she had missed before. The way Vasquez had moved with complete confidence, as if she knew exactly what would happen next. The way she had spoken about education and remembering everything they had taught us. Most telling of all, the way she had looked at each council member before leaving, as if she was memorizing their faces. I believe, Thexkari said slowly, that we may have made a serious error in judgment. What kind of error? Speaker Meridian asked. We assumed that humans were weak because they did not fight us. We assumed they were simple because they did not show off their technology. We assumed they were grateful because they accepted our treatment without complaint. She paused, letting her words sink in. But what if we were wrong? What if humans were never weak at all? What if they were simply waiting? Waiting for what? Kromvar demanded. For us to give them a reason to leave. The chamber fell silent again. The idea was too terrible to consider, but also too logical to ignore. If humans had been planning their departure for centuries, it would explain many things. Why they had always chosen the worthless worlds in the Outer Rim. Why they had volunteered for the most dangerous and far-flung assignments. Why they had never fought back against unfair treatment. They had not been weak. They had been patient, but why? Sekhav asked. Why pretend to be less than they were? Thexkari looked around the chamber at her fellow council members, at the arrogant architects who thought they were perfect, at the greedy trade masters who thought only of profit, at the warlike Kethvar who settled everything with violence. Perhaps, she said quietly, they were studying us. The thought sent a chill through every being in the chamber. For 300 years, the council had believed they were teaching humans how to be civilized. But what if it had been the other way around? What if humans had been learning everything about council technology, politics, and weaknesses? What if the students had become the teachers, and the teachers never realized they were now the students? In the silence that followed, every member of the Galactic Council began to understand that the galaxy had changed. The humans were gone, and they were not coming back. But the question that kept everyone awake at night was simple and terrifying. What exactly were the humans doing out there in the dark? And more importantly, what would they do next? 2 years after humanity's departure, the galaxy learned the meaning of true terror. It began with whispers from the edge of known space. Scout ships reported strange readings in the void between galaxies. Ancient sensor networks built millennia ago and mostly forgotten, suddenly came alive with warnings that no one understood. Then the first colony went silent. Nexus Prime, a mining world in the hegemony of Kethvar, simply stopped responding to communications. When rescue ships arrived, they found nothing but empty buildings and machinery that looked like it had been dissolved from the inside out. Within weeks, the attack spread. The creatures responsible finally revealed themselves, and the sight struck fear into hearts across the galaxy. The Devourers had returned. Nobody alive remembered the last time these ancient machines had appeared. The history books spoke of them only in whispers. Self-replicating constructs from the dark between galaxies. They consumed everything in their path. Matter, energy, even information itself was food for their endless hunger. The last time they had come, billions had died before they mysteriously vanished back into the void. That was 5,000 years ago, when the galaxy was young and different species were still learning to work together. Now they were back, and they brought fleets that darkened the stars. War Chief Krumvar stood in the Council's military command center, watching the tactical displays with growing horror. Red dots marked devourer fleets, each one capable of destroying entire star systems. They were spreading like a plague across the outer sectors. "Status report," he barked. 17 worlds lost in the past week, reported his aide. The devourer fleets seemed to be moving in a coordinated pattern. "They're not random attacks anymore. What about our defenses, sir?" The aide hesitated. "Our weapons barely slow them down. The Zephyrian energy cannons that destroyed moon-sized asteroids just bounce off their hulls. The architect crystal technology that was supposed to be invincible can't even target them properly." Krumvar's claws dug gouges in the metal railing. For 2 years, the Council had been arguing about humanity's absence. Now they faced an enemy that made all their political problems seem like children's games. What about the other Council fleets? The Wisdom Seekers are trying to evacuate their research stations. The architects are attempting to analyze devourer technology, but their probe ships keep getting consumed. The Trade Consortium is, well, they're mostly hiding behind anyone willing to protect them. It was a disaster. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations were being systematically destroyed by an enemy they could not understand or fight. Then something impossible happened. The devourer advance stopped. Not slowed. Not delayed. Stopped completely, as if they had hit an invisible wall. Confused reports poured in from across the galaxy. Devourer fleets that had been consuming everything in their path were suddenly retreating. Some witnesses claimed the machine creatures looked afraid, though everyone knew machines could not feel fear. In the council chambers, emergency sessions ran day and night as representatives tried to understand what was happening. "The Devourers have withdrawn from the Gamma sector entirely," Intelligence Chief Nixtel reported. "Their fleets are moving back toward deep space." "That makes no sense," Architect Prime chimed. "Devourers do not retreat. They consume until there is nothing left to consume." "Unless something scared them away," suggested Thexkari. "What could possibly frighten creatures that eat entire worlds?" Before anyone could answer, every screen in the chamber lit up with an incoming transmission. The source code showed it was coming from the Outer Rim territories, from human space. Ambassador Elena Vasquez appeared on the screens, looking exactly as she had 2 years ago when she walked out of the council chambers. Behind her, through a large window, strange structures could be seen floating in space. They were enormous, bigger than anything the council had ever built, and their design seemed to bend the laws of physics. "Greetings to the Galactic Council," Elena said in the same calm voice they remembered. "I hope you are all well." The chamber erupted in voices. Questions, demands, accusations all mixed together in a chaos of sound. But Elena simply waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "I am contacting you to report that the Devourer incursion has been successfully neutralized. The machine entities have been convinced to return to their dormant state and have withdrawn to deep space." Silence fell like a hammer blow. "Convinced?" Speaker Meridian finally managed to ask. "Yes," Elena replied. "We had a conversation with their collective intelligence. They understood our position and agreed to leave." "A conversation?" War Chief Krumvar's voice cracked. "With the Devourers?" "Of course. All intelligence can be reasoned with if you understand how it thinks." The Devourers were simply confused about the current state of galactic civilization. "We clarified a few things for them." Thexkari leaned forward. "What exactly did you clarify?" Elena's expression remained perfectly neutral. "We explained that this galaxy is currently under human protection. The Devourers respect strength and recognize territorial claims. Once they understood the situation, they were quite reasonable about withdrawing." The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Under human protection? The species they had dismissed as primitive animals was claiming to protect the entire galaxy? "That's impossible," Architect Prime chimed, its crystalline voice shaking. "Humans do not possess the technology to threaten Devourers." Elena's smile was small and cold. "Don't we?" She gestured behind her, and the camera view expanded. The council delegates could now see the full scope of the structures in the background. Massive orbital platforms that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Ships that looked like they had been built by gods rather than mortals. Technologies that made the Council's best science look like primitive tools. For 300 years, Elena continued, humanity observed and learned from the galactic community. We studied your technologies, your politics, your strengths and weaknesses. We took the best of what you offered and improved upon it. She paused, letting them absorb this information. We also studied your enemies. The Devourers have been sleeping in dark space for 5 millennia. But we knew they would return eventually. We prepared accordingly. How? Bexkari whispered. By becoming something they would respect, Elena replied. The Devourers are ancient and powerful, but they understand hierarchy. When they encountered our deep space monitoring stations and realized what we had become, they chose to negotiate rather than fight. More images appeared on the screens. Ships so advanced they seemed like living things. Weapons that could crack planets. Defensive systems that surrounded entire star systems, all bearing the simple insignia of United Earth Systems. Where did this technology come from? Demanded Cromvar. From human minds freed from council restrictions, Elena answered. Did you really think we spent 3 centuries in your empire without learning anything? We took your science and went beyond it. We took your engineering and perfected it. We took your greatest achievements and made them the starting point for our own. The truth was staggering. Humanity had not been the junior partner struggling to keep up. They had been the advanced species holding themselves back, pretending to be less than they were while they quietly built something greater than anything the galaxy had ever seen. But why hide this? Bexkari asked. Why pretend to be weak? Elena's expression softened slightly. Because we hoped you might change. For 300 years we waited for the Council to grow beyond its prejudices and fears. We hoped that eventually you would see us as equals and partners rather than subjects and servants. She looked directly at each delegate, just as she had on the day she left. When you voted to place restrictions on our expansion and control our trade, you made it clear that change would never come from within the Council. So we chose to change the galaxy from outside it. And now, Speaker Meridian asked, now the Devourer threat has been neutralized. The galaxy is safe to continue its development. Humanity wishes the Galactic Council well in its future endeavors. Wait, Sekhav hissed desperately. We need to discuss terms, trade agreements, defense pacts. Surely we can work together now. Elena's expression returned to neutral politeness. Humanity appreciates the interest but must respectfully decline all entanglements with the Galactic Council. But the Devourers could return. Cromvar protested. If they do, we will handle the situation appropriately, Elena replied. Humanity takes its responsibilities seriously. What about us? Bexkari asked quietly. Elena considered this question for a long moment. The galaxy is large and there is room for many different ways of life. The Council is free to continue governing its member worlds as it sees fit. Other species are free to choose their own paths. Humanity simply asks to be left alone to pursue our own destiny among the stars. She paused, then added something that sent chills through every delegate in the chamber. As long as certain standards of galactic citizenship are maintained, of course. The transmission ended, leaving the Council in stunned silence. The message was clear without being spoken. Humanity was now the dominant power in the galaxy. They would not interfere with Council business, but they would not allow another Devourer crisis to threaten galactic civilization. The children had grown up, moved out of the house, and become the guardians of the neighborhood. And there was nothing the old path 3 years after the Devourer crisis. The galaxy had learned to live with a new reality. The old order was crumbling, and something entirely different was taking its place. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, now bearing the title Speaker for Humanity, stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station. The massive space habitat orbited a star that had once been considered worthless by Council surveys. Now it was the heart of a thriving civilization that stretched across dozens of systems. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from 30 different species docking at the station's ports. Not just human vessels, but craft from the Altarians, the Denari, the Makers, and many others. Species that had been ignored or dismissed by the Council were now partners in humanity's growing alliance. Ma'am, her aide said quietly, the daily reports are ready. Elena nodded without taking her eyes off the view. Go ahead. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium sent another formal request for trade negotiations. That's the 47th one this month. Same response as always? Yes, ma'am. Humanity appreciates the interest but must respectfully decline. Elena smiled slightly. The trade consortium was practically begging now. Without access to human shipping networks and technology, their profits had collapsed. Several Zephyrian commercial houses had gone bankrupt and their government was becoming desperate. What about the Keithvar? War Chief Cromvar himself sent a personal message. He's requesting a meeting to discuss mutual defense agreements. His exact words were, "The galaxy needs strong protectors working together." How quickly they changed their tune, Elena murmured. 3 years ago, we were barely evolved animals. Now we're potential partners. The aide shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, some of our people think we should at least talk to them. They're offering significant concessions. Elena turned to look at her aide. A young woman named Sarah Chen. She was Admiral Chen Wei's daughter, part of the generation that had grown up knowing humanity's true capabilities. Tell me, Sarah, what do you think we should do? Sarah considered carefully. From a strategic standpoint, the Council species could be useful allies. They have resources we could use and knowledge that might benefit our research, but they spent 3 centuries treating us like servants. Some of them called us animals. They voted to restrict our growth and control our lives. If we welcome them back now just because they're afraid, what message does that send? Elena nodded approvingly. The younger generation understood the lessons their parents had learned the hard way. Exactly. Trust must be earned, not given freely. The Council had 300 years to treat us with respect. They chose differently. But what about the species that want to leave the Council and join us? This was a more complex question. Over the past 3 years, 17 species had formally withdrawn from Council authority. Some, like the Altarians and Denari, had been humanity's friends from the beginning. Others were newer allies who had been inspired by humanity's example. Each case is different, Elena said. We evaluate them based on their actions, not their words. The Corvani, for instance, have shown genuine commitment to peaceful cooperation. The Tyrellians have shared valuable research freely. They've earned their place here. Through the observation deck's windows, a massive construction project was visible in the distance. It looked like a ring of metal and crystal large enough to encircle a planet. How is the Gateway project progressing? Elena asked. Ahead of schedule, Sarah replied with obvious pride. The joint human-Altarian engineering teams have solved the power distribution problems. We should have our first test of interplanetary transportation within 6 months. The Gateway was just one of dozens of projects that would have been impossible under Council rule. Freed from political restrictions and bureaucratic interference, human innovation had exploded, working with allied species who contributed their own expertise. They were pushing the boundaries of what technology could accomplish. Any word from the makers? Their latest communication probe arrived yesterday. They've successfully established a colony in the Andromeda Galaxy and are sending back data about conditions there. Elena shook her head in amazement. The synthetic beings had always been brilliant, but under Council rule they had been restricted to simple manufacturing tasks. Now they were exploring beyond the galaxy itself, pushing into regions of space that organic beings could never survive. And our monitoring stations? Any sign of devourer activity? All quiet on that front. Our deep space sensors haven't detected any movement from their dormant zones. The devourers remained a concern, but humanity's demonstration of power during the crisis had established a balance. The ancient machines understood that this galaxy was now protected by beings capable of matching their strength. As long as that balance held, they would remain in dark space. Ma'am, Sarah said hesitantly, there's one more thing. Counselor Thex Kari of the Wisdom Seekers has requested a private meeting. Not for trade or alliance, but just to talk. Elena considered this. Of all the Council members, Thex Kari had been the only one to truly understand what humanity's departure meant. She had tried to warn her colleagues, but they had not listened. What does she want to discuss? She says she wants to apologize. On behalf of her people and for her own role in what happened. This was unexpected. Political entities rarely apologized for anything, especially not to species they had once considered inferior. Schedule a meeting, Elena decided, but make it clear that this is a personal conversation, not a diplomatic negotiation. Yes, ma'am. Elena returned her attention to the view outside. The galaxy had changed so much in just 3 years. The rigid hierarchy that had dominated space for millennia was breaking down. Younger species were finding their own paths. Ancient empires were struggling to adapt to a reality where they were no longer the most powerful forces in the galaxy. And humanity? Humanity was finally free to become what it had always been capable of being. Sarah, bring up the long-range development plans. A holographic display appeared in the air, showing star charts marked with human colonies, research stations, and allied territories. It was an impressive sight, but Elena knew it was just the beginning. The Tau Ceti project is ready for Phase 2 implementation, Sarah reported. We'll have fully terraformed worlds ready for settlement within 50 years. The makers are offering to help with atmospheric processing. And the deep space exploration initiatives? 3 expedition fleets are preparing to launch beyond the galactic rim. If the preliminary surveys are correct, we found indications of other intelligent civilizations in nearby galaxies. Elena felt a familiar thrill at the possibilities. For 3 centuries, humanity had been confined to a small corner of one galaxy, told that was all they deserved. Now they were preparing to reach across the void to new worlds and new civilizations. Ma'am, Sarah said quietly, do you ever regret how things turned out? Some people say we could have reformed the council from within if we had been more patient. Elena was quiet for a long moment, remembering the day she had walked out of the council chambers. She had been carrying the hopes and frustrations of 50 million humans, the weight of 3 centuries of discrimination and lost opportunities. Sarah, let me ask you something. In all your studies of human history, can you think of a single example where a privileged group voluntarily gave up their advantages to help those they considered beneath them? Sarah thought about it. No, ma'am. Change usually comes from pressure, not from generosity. Exactly. The council had 300 years to change. They had countless opportunities to treat us fairly. They chose not to because they benefited from the existing system. Elena gestured toward the bustling activity, visible through the observation deck. Look at what we've accomplished in just 3 years of freedom. Look at our allies who were also dismissed and ignored by the council. Look at the technologies we're developing, the worlds we're exploring, the problems we're solving. She turned to face Sarah directly. This is what happens when intelligence is allowed to flourish without artificial restrictions. This is what the galaxy could have been all along if the council had been interested in cooperation instead of domination. But now they want to cooperate. Now they want to survive. Elena corrected. They're afraid of being left behind while the rest of the galaxy moves forward. That's not the same thing as genuine cooperation. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Sarah checked her tablet and frowned. Ma'am, we're receiving reports of a first contact situation in the Vega system. A previously unknown species has emerged from what we thought was empty space. They're requesting dialogue. Elena's expression brightened. First contact situations were always exciting. They represented new possibilities, new perspectives, new opportunities for growth and learning. Send the Endeavor to make contact. Tell Captain Rodriguez to follow standard protocols but to be prepared for anything. If these beings have been hiding from council surveys, they might be more advanced than expected. Yes, ma'am. As Sarah left to relay the orders, Elena remained on the observation deck. Somewhere out there in the galaxy, the old council was still meeting, still arguing, still trying to maintain their